so that we can get to some of the alternative readings, some of the background readings. So Genesis 1 and 9, what are some of the messages that you took from those? Because we're going to learn from each other. Someone jump in, just raise your hand or start talking.
Janet, where is she? Janet, you want to summarize our group?
We don't need each group, just someone jump in.
What was the question?
I'll jump in. I was just talking. I was just talking with Edna.
I don't know where Edna is.
And I'm not sure where Edna is, but
Edna didn't make it back.
In number 6.
Oh, can I ask you to start with 1 and 2?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I just want you to start with 1 and 2. We're going to go chronologically on this one. So 1 and 2. Someone what is the Torah here? Why did we choose these texts? What are we trying to get across here?
Those both seem universal in that it's referring to all men, all humans.
All humans.
And their similarities.
Well, it's that, right? This idea that not every culture has, but ours deeply embedded in our culture, that you are no more important than any other human being in this world, right? Each of us have the same level of importance, each person in God's image. So then we get to, if you were confused about that, number 3, therefore, but a single person was created in the world to teach that if any person had caused a single life to perish, and then it says from Israel, he is deemed by scripture, he's called a whole world to purchase. Right in this very translation of this text, and in the text in Hebrew, we get the problem. We see that the Mishnah already in the 2nd century is saying that every single person is like an entire world. And then one of the commentators says, wait, we mean only Israelites.
Yeah, but we grappled with that because if you go to the end, he says every human is stamped with the seal of the first man, and the first man was Adam and wasn't Jewish. So that seems more universal. So I didn't understand why the from Israel was there.
So why do you think the from Israel is there? It's a gloss on the text. It's a later emendation to the text. Why is it there? The text really is that first thought, is the thought at the end. It is talking about how we're all creating God's image and we all have this stamp, which makes us a similar and all a child of God. But someone put in this text this idea, we mean just Israel here.
Oh, it was put in later?
That's actually in the Hebrew text, Rabbi?
Yeah. It's in the Hebrew text. Yeah.
Wow.
But it was put in later? Did you say that?
Not every text says me Israel. Some of them do and some of them don't.
Oh, okay. Now I feel
Some
bad.
of them make it a really universal text. Welcome, Judy. Some of them make it a not universal text.
So where it says my father was greater than your father, again,
no, this is the only place where it adds the Israelite is at the very top. If you caused a single person to perish.
There's 2 places.
But see where it says that one should not say to another that my father was greater than your father. That
yes,
to me indicates that we should respect everyone around us, regardless of
life is a life,
where they come from, regardless of what religion
that is absolutely what I think the text is teaching. Yeah. Except if you go to the top of the text, 2 lines down in the Hebrew, at least, Shekol ha-me'abed nefesh achat mi-Yisrael. Anyone who causes a single life from the Jewish people to perish. So even really early on, even in the 2nd century, there is a sense of, are we about everyone, or are we about ourselves? I want to read the text the way you read it and the way I think it should be read. I don't like saying having in parentheses Mi Yisrael from the Jewish people. That's not who you or
Well,
I
how-
think we
Was
are.
there, wait 1 second, was there already persecution against the Jews already?
Well, the temple's destroyed the first time in what year?
32?
580 586
Oh, the
BCE.
first one, 586 BCE.
586 BCE. Then the second temple and starts in the year 63, goes to, right? 70, the
The
common era.
mission is after that.
What did you say?
The mission is way after that.
Yes, so she's asking, was there hatred of Jews before? Yes.
Yeah,
So Rabbi, how do you reconcile the parentheses from Israel with what's at the bottom where it says, the holy blessed one has stamped every human with the seal of the first man, yet not one of them are like another. So
I feel that it is the nuance of the Jewish people, even in the 2nd century and beyond, fighting with this idea of who is it really the universal that we care about? Is it every person or is it every Jew? I, like you, read the end.
Yeah.
But I know many Jews who read the beginning. And I know many Jews this week who read the beginning. And I don't want to say that one is right or one is wrong, because I don't know. I think it's more how the balance between them, between how universal we are and how particularistic you are. And maybe this is the time when Kohelet or Ecclesiastes comes in, right? Ecclesiastes, there's a time for everything and under heaven. Maybe when you're being devoured in battle is the time that you stand up for yourself and not for the whole universal. Maybe, I don't know.
Those are
Eleni, we're going to go on to the next text so we can get to some of the others.
Can I interrupt?
No, because Eleni was first and then Rini. You, Eleni,
Yeah, I think this is really tricky. I think it's a kind of both and. I can have an enemy and I can still acknowledge their full humanity. I can have a problem and not allow myself to deny their humanity. It might be a distorted humanity, it might be a, evil
Right.
behavior, but I think it's the particularism and the universalism, I think, are in a dance throughout history and in different spaces at different times.
and in
We
this
live in
text, right? And in this early text, you see it, because I believe that the early text was written not with Mi Yisrael. I think that was added. And not every text has it.
Right.
Rini.
I'm sorry, this is off topic, but Ted just came down and told me they're starting negotiations to release all the hostages.
Oh, wow.
Baruch Hashem.
So I just thought that was
Baruch
worthy of interrupting.
Thank you. All right. So I know that I don't have a ton of time. So I want to go to the next text, which is the Genesis 12 text. And this is about what? Because we're at the universal and now we're moving into the particular. What does this text tell us?
Is that the Lech Lecha?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Lech Lecha.
but you know what? I thought whoever selected these texts is a genius, but you think it's
Well,
you
this is
start off
hard.
thinking it's particular, but then it whatever the word is, but then it's not, because in the end it says, and all the families of the earth shall bless themselves by you. So even when it's being particular, it's also universal.
So that is the hard destiny of the Jewish people, that we believe that part of our particularism is to have a sense of humanity for all peoples. The Reform movement did very well in the 1950s and 60s in reinterpreting the phrase tikkun olam. Tikkun olam used to, in the Mishnah, not mean social justice. It meant societal order. and now it means social justice. They took it from this idea of, yeah, we're supposed to, our particularistic job is to care about all of humanity. And then
Well,
you're going
that's
to come
okay.
back and ask the question and say, but okay, who's caring about us? All right, we're going to go to the next page. I said we're doing these really quickly so that we can then go to see some early Zionist thinkers. So I'm going to go text 5. And you shall no longer be called Avram, but your name shall be Abraham. I'll make you the father of a multitude of nations. I'll make you exceedingly fertile and make nations, not nation, but nations of you. And kings shall come forth from you. I will maintain my covenant between me and you and your offspring to come. Not one, not just us. So go down to verse 20 at the bottom of the page. As for Ishmael, I have heeded you. I hereby bless him. I will make him fertile and exceedingly numerous. He shall be the father of numerous. He shall be the father of 12 chieftains, and I will make him a great nation. That is not what you generally think about when you think about the covenant of Abraham, right? The covenant of Abraham has a particular covenant with us, the Jewish people, with Yitzchak and Yaakov. But also in our Torah, there's a covenant with Ishmael, which becomes who?
The Arab nation, the Arab people.
Muslims, not Arabs, Muslims. Yeah. So it's here we have a particularistic story that comes out of Isaac and Jacob. And then Avram has another child that is also supposed to become a great nation. And not just in the Quran, but here in the Torah. So I think this verse 20 is so important for us to know and read, and not the one that we memorize. Okay.
What about 21?
What?
21. So 21, then he says, my covenant I will maintain with Isaac. Isn't that?
They're both covenants.
Yeah.
I will
And
make
do
you
not
fertile.
the Muslim people circumcise their males?
Yeah, they have a similar covenant to ours through Abraham, and then they have a different one as well. So we have similarities and we have parts that make us quite different. Okay, and then you get to number 6. I think that Bob Schwartz wanted to say something about number 6.
So, at the bottom, somewhere in here it is. It says, I found this interesting in the context of what's going on now in Gaza.
Yeah.
What if there should be 50 innocent within the city? Will you then wipe out the place and not forgive it for the sake of the innocent 50 who are in it? Far be it from you to do such a thing, to bring death upon the innocent as well as the guilty, so that innocent and guilty fear alike. Again, this is not something that I typically go through, but I found this very interesting in the context of what's going on now in Gaza. And one of the things that I said in the breakout room when I was discussing it with Edna is that people said they're angry about what happened on October 7th. It's more than anger, it's outrage. And they're also confused because they feel badly about what's going on in Gaza with the innocent people, to the extent that there are innocent people. But the two are not mutually exclusive. You can feel badly for the innocent who are being maimed and killed, while feeling anger at what happened on October 7th all at the same time. But what's in this verse about, are you going to sacrifice the innocent because you're going to go after the guilty, is interesting, and it's a dilemma, it's a conundrum that Israel faces today that perhaps we always face in a time of strife.
But this would also, may I say something also? But this would also be true of World War II or any war.
That's right.
You're always going to have a lot of innocent people killed in a war. But should we not have gone into World War II? I mean,
No, but
think of it that way too.
I think what this is saying is that you should go after the guilty, but to the extent that you can, you shouldn't go after the innocent.
That's what you are. That's what they're doing. But that's what they're doing in Israel. They're
That's-
trying hard to avoid them, but they're the guilty are buried with right in the middle of the innocent. So what do you do?
You know, you brought up World War II. In World War II, we firebombed Dresden and we leveled it.
That was terrible, but there were plenty of other, but there was plenty of other, that was a war crime. But all the rest of the people that were killed, there were many, many, many people killed.
No, I'm not saying.
Anyway,
I'm
well,
saying.
I
I'm
don't
not
wanna-
You
saying
guys aren't
that you-
arguing. You're a millimeter apart.
Yeah,
Right.
I'm not arguing about it. I'm just saying that it's the
It's
conundrum
inevitable.
that Israel faces and that
Oh, definitely.
any nation will face if they're going to
That's
go
right.
after people who they perceive as guilty.
And by extension, don't just, we want to say it's not just Israel, it's the Jewish people. We are connected, we hope, to them. And hopefully you will feel a sense of pride in the Israel Defense Forces trying to uphold this idea of tahor haneshek, of just this concept of trying to say, oh, for the first 3 weeks before they went into Gaza, they dropped pamphlets telling people to get out of harm's way.
Right.
Was it going to be a Gan Eden, a garden of paradise where they were going to? No, but it also wasn't going to be what it looked like on October 7th in Beirut. So it wasn't great, but it also wasn't flattening Dresden. It was somewhere in between. It was trying. It was saying, at least, as Bob, I think this is what you're saying, it's our responsibility to at least have the conversation. And frankly, Israel was having the conversation and probably hurt them. Their ethics made it harder for them militarily. And probably they didn't always, it's hard in war. All right, I want to go to some of the background reading, and I'm going to take you super fire through some of it. And I know that we're all in pain. So I believe that Martha Nussbaum is a law professor at Chicago. And I'm going into the background reading. I'm just going to read you a couple things from it that I thought were incredibly provocative and might help us think about the particularism that we're all feeling. I have some friends who are really far left on Israeli politics, and Israelis, and they said to me, we were radicalized on October 7th. What do you think they meant?
I was radicalized also.
They became more particularistic.
Yeah, they became more particularistic. And at the same time, they're still talking to their friends and they're going to their coexistence groups. It's such a difficulty. Okay, so this is the beginning of the article. For those of you who didn't read it, it talks about Yad Vashem, and in Yad Vashem, the Avenue of the Righteous Gentiles. If you haven't been there, go to Israel when you can soon. It says, would one in similar circumstances have the moral courage to risk one's life to save a human being simply because he or she is human? More generally, would one in similar circumstances have the moral courage to recognize humanity and respond to its claim, even if the powers that be denied its presence? That recognition, wherever it is made, is the basic act of world citizenship. She is calling to us to care about every human being. And yet, it's hard to care about every human being when you see your own being murdered. So in the next page, to count people as moral equals is to treat nationality, ethnicity, religion, class, race, and gender as morally irrelevant.
Point.
As irrelevant to that of equal standing. So what do you think? Should we be treating everything as to be moral equals? We need to, all of our ways of gathering, all of our family associations and tribal and nationhood. Yeah.
So it's sort of interesting because Israel is a pluralistic nation. It's not just us there. And
Right.
the Arabs that are part of Israel are on Israel's side. Some of them
Some
are
are.
fighting in the IDF even.
Absolutely.
So it's not necessarily we aren't necessarily being only for ourselves in this war.
Well, maybe we are, if that Israel, in those places, Israel has been able to become the place of all its citizens, which was part of the Declaration of Independence, that it would be the home for all of its citizens, whether they were Jews or not, while being a particularistic Jewish state. That's what's so hard about our declaration.
Exactly, but we're not being, we are being universal. I think we're being just against evil. We're not being only for ourselves. We're being for the Jewish nation, but the Jewish nation has Arabs in it as well, and Christians in it as well, and we're protecting them as well.
But
Neil Lewis.
Didn't you say, go ahead.
Just
Didn't
a
you say,
thought.
Rabbi Mera, that what you just read
Yeah.
was religion and nation make divisions in the world, and that this is a bad thing. Is that what you read, really?
This is a legal philosopher who, and
yes, it's Summers.
we should view the equal worth of all human beings as relative, regulative constraint in our political actions and aspirations. And that's hard because we don't believe.
But I think he's right. I think that these do make divisions. I think they do make divisions in the world, but they're there. What can you do?
And yet, and I celebrated Thanksgiving, and on July 4th, I'm happy that I was born with an American passport, and, couldn't be more privileged to have been born as an American. So I take that nationality, and I also, say the bracha, that famous old bracha, Baruch she'asani isha. It's a joke. That wasn't how the blessing was. The blessing in the morning is, thank you, God, for not making me a woman.
Right.
I say it the other way. Thank you, God, for making me a woman. Yeah. Okay. I want to go to these two other beautiful texts, Eleni, and then I'd love to go to the text from the 1880s.
Yeah, just real quick. I think to honor other humans as moral equals, I think is really a bottom line of being a human being. It doesn't mean there aren't going to be arguments. It doesn't mean there's not going to be enemies. It doesn't mean there's not going to be bad actors. But I, as a human, have to start from a premise that all humans, that nationality, ethnicity, all of that is morally irrelevant. I can't
actually
say that another human is less human than I am.
And actually, the early text would say, Torah would require you to say that.
Exactly. But it doesn't mean that history would not force us into situations where we have to kill the person who's, pointing the gun in our face. So I think that we ought not let ourselves be forced into having to choose whether someone is human or not.
We can't choose. We can't. You're right. We cannot choose. Edna, and then we're going to go to, Moshe and I had planned to do this year a series on the history of Zionism, because we think you can't understand modern Jewish history without the history of Zionism, and then the war happened. But we're going to get in these two early Zionist texts, and I'm going to recommend a book to you, which hopefully you'll all read. But did someone want Edna? Professor Edna. You are on mute.
Now I'm mute.
Sorry. I agree. I read the Martha Nussbaum article, and I think that there is one important thing that we should add to our comments. That morally, almost going back to the verses that you introduced before about human being coined or stapled the same, and there is a lot of similarity. So she's kind of promoting sympathy with the other morally, but very beautifully, and this is what we didn't say, and it takes us to our time too, that those who are ignorant or have moral judgment, right? They destroy this kind of looking at equality and sympathy to the other. So I wanted to produce it because even when we want to see everyone is equal, there is some hierarchy with the deeds that some people are doing, that it's hard to say it's the same.
You know, and Edna, I want to echo what you're saying and do it in a way that is actually helps us understand it. I think not nation against nation, but even within
no,
a
a man to man.
No, right. But and so the way that I think about that is I used to at my old shul, there was where Judy is from, there is a prison ministry, meaning that people from the men's club go every other week, and I would go too sometimes and teach at a maximum security prison. And Jews, all Jews. And those people have forfeited their right once they murdered others, once they did these great crimes, they are on a lesser hierarchical level because they have shown that they could not participate in the rest of society. So they have taken themselves out of the equality of society because of their actions. People do that in the world, actors do that in the world as well. Okay, let's go to Leon Pinsker, auto-emancipation. Auto-emancipation, can we emancipate ourselves? 1882. I wish I knew German well enough to read this. I don't. So I'm going to go to page 63. I think it's just absolutely important to be reading these texts. And what I'd love to see is us do a class actually to read the book, The Zionist Ideas. How many of you own the book, The Zionist Ideas, besides Moshe? Because I gave him a copy. Didn't I give you a copy? So there's the original one was written by Arthur Hertzberg, Rabbi Dr. Arthur Hertzberg, but it was revised in 2019 to add the voices of women and Mizrahim, people in the Mizrach, how do you say that? So the Middle Eastern Jews. And so we can understand how Israel is from how it got born. And so let's look at these two foundational texts. Do you have it in front of you, page 63? Or I'm going to read it to you. It's in the text that were given out. It's text number 2, but it's on page 63. This is an appeal to his people by a Russian Jew. No previous civilization has been able to achieve, nor can we see even in the remote distance the day of the Messiah, when national barriers will no longer exist and all mankind will live in brotherhood and concord. Until then, nations must narrow their aspiration to achieve a tolerable modus operandi, vivendi. Like, how are we going to live together? The world has yet long to wait for eternal peace. Meanwhile, nations live side by side in a state of relative peace. That's what he's looking for, relative peace, secured by treaties and international law, but based chiefly on the fundamental equality between them. That's when there's fundamental equality between nations, then they live at peace with each other. If not, you have Russia and the Ukraine, or Israel and its neighbors. And he goes on, but it is different with the people of Israel. There's no such equality in the nations dealing with the Jews. The basis is absent upon which treaties and international law may be applied. What is absent, he says? Mutual respect. Only when this basis is established, when the equality of Jews with other nations become a fact, can the Jewish problem be considered solved. This is in the 1880s. He's writing about what the Jewish problem is. What's the Jewish problem, according to Leon Pinsker?
It's lack of respect.
Yeah. Lack of respect. They don't respect us enough. Rodney Dangerfield, I don't get no respect. We don't have an army. What he's really saying is we don't have an army. And we don't
have agency.
We don't have, who said that? Right.
Lenny.
And that's what he's looking for, auto-emancipation. Only when we get this kind of agency will we be able to have the kind of moral respect from other nations, hence Zionism. So look in the next reading, a reading of that Herzl wrote in The Jewish State. Okay, so I'm going to page 65. How many of you were at Princeton on Friday afternoon around Palmer Square around 4 o'clock? I just drove by. I had to get home quickly because candle lighting was early this week for Shabbat. And I stopped my car across from where we planted the daffodils. And there's a whole group of people yelling genocide to the Jews, genocide from the Jews. And then they were yelling, Palestine from the river to the sea will be Jew free. And it felt like not just anti-Zionism, but it felt like good old fashioned anti-Semitism.
Definitely anti-Semitism. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm now going to Herzl. Second paragraph on page 65. Anti-Semitism is a highly complex movement, which I think I understand. I approach this movement as a Jew, yet without fear or hatred. I believe that I can see in it the elements of cruel sport, of common commercial rivalry, of inherited prejudice, of religious intolerance, but also of a supposed need for self-defense. I consider the Jewish question neither a social nor a religious one, even though it sometimes takes these and other forms. It is a national question, and to solve it, we must first of all establish an international political problem to be discussed and settled by the civilized nations of the world in council. What's he saying?
We have to become a state.
Yeah, because then we can finally deal with anti-Semitism. Then we have the ability to actually be part of the nations of the world. I think that what was so... Are any of you listening to the podcasts by Yossi Klein Halevi and Danielle Hartman?
I get
Did you hear this week's?
No, I didn't. I heard
Yeah,
it
if you don't know which ones I'm talking about, it's called For Heaven's Sake. And the author of the text, the podcast for this class after class to listen to is Yossi Klein Halevi. But I listen to Yossi Klein Halevi every week with Danielle Hartman, For Heaven's Sake podcast from Hartman. And he's doing 2 or 3 times a week now, 20 minutes on how the war feels to them in Jerusalem. And it is this interesting idea of what was the big defeat of October 7th? It was of the Jewish state not being able to defend the Jews.
That's a terrible, right.
And keep the Jewish people safe. And then it was the shame that goes along with that. Because for 75 years, we have been saying, well, we finally have a state.
Rabbi, it was also, I think, a loss of confidence. You know, the Israelis felt like their IDF could keep them safe, but they don't have that same feeling now.
Right. So I want to tell you about the articles 5, 6, 7, 5 and 6, basically are a discussion between Rabbi Danny Gordis and Rabbi Sharon Brous. So these are from 2012, but these articles played out again in the press this week. So Rabbi Danny Gordis is an Israeli Masorti rabbi, conservative rabbi. He helped found the rabbinical school at the University of Judaism, very prolific author. Rabbi Sharon Brous, probably one of the most well-known of my colleagues of our generation, founded a big community in LA called Ikar. And they were talking about in 2012 during a Hamas-Gaza war, how much one can criticize Israel and also at the same time feel a sense of compassion for innocent Palestinians. Last week, Rabbi Gordis wrote another article in the Times of Israel, again, having the same argument with Rabbi Brous from 11 years ago, saying, at this time, we don't need to have compassion for the other, because we need to have compassion most for ourselves. I think most of us here on this Zoom would want to come down on the other side of saying that we want to have open hearts enough for both, and saying that this is what is hard. This is what it's hard about being a Jew. It's feeling that sense of the universal, and I care about every human being. And I care about the poor child who is suffering in Gaza right now. And it's also having the ability to say, and I care more about the poor child in the south of Israel that's suffering right now. Can you care more about, name the name of your child, your particular child. Everyone has if you don't have a child, your child, someone name the names of your children. Judy, you care more about Josh than you do about me. Now you care about me. I know that. I've known you for a long time, Judy. But you have to care more about your own child that you gave birth to and raised. It doesn't mean that I don't think you care about me. I know you care about me. So we make that an even larger problem of, as a Jew, I care about every Jewish child. And I also care about all children. That makes it excruciatingly hard to be a Jew. But we don't want to lose either.
Then how do you defend yourself?
Who said that?
Janet.
Yeah, so it's particularism and universalism. Particularism means I defend myself first. It's bringing Ecclesiastes in. There is a time for everything under heaven. I defend myself. But maybe one day defend will be going to a negotiating table. I don't know. I'm not in that position. I live in America. Maybe that will be the way to defend my people at some point. Maybe it'll mean sending in troops and doing whatever needs to be done to close every single tunnel. But it means what you were all centered in on earlier when Bob was talking about that text, that we still have to have the conversations. That's what makes maybe our lives a little bit more complicated, but good, complicated in a good way. I want to be pained at caring for each child. And I want to be pained that sometimes I have to tell my non-Christian neighbors to care about us. It's both. Okay, who wants to speak? Yeah, Abby.
Like what I sort of got from the text on Genesis about, what was that? About God telling Abraham that he's keeping this covenant specially for him and the future generations. And I find that, I think in Judaism, it is a mandate, future generations, like to keep it. It's an edict to you that you owe to your future generations to keep this covenant. And I think this is why, like, there's such a, there's the conflict, but there's also the obligation to bear witness to this covenant. And how do you bear witness to this covenant? By passing it on to your children and your grandchildren and your great-grandchildren. It doesn't stop there. And that's why I feel like in the context of this war, saying that you care first, about these children who were taken as hostages, why it's so important to save every single child is...
And adult.
Yeah, an adult. That it goes, like we can only, as humans, we can only live for so long. And so for us to, continue that covenant, that it is imperative that we pass it on to our generations.
That we pass on the tension of universalism and particularism. Is that what you're saying?
That's how that's what I got from that text. That it's that it will be a constant struggle, but it is important to educate the future generations about the struggle.
Yeah, that we're maybe part of the covenant, of part of being part of the Jewish people is to care about the other. And sometimes we are kicked in the pants and reminded that we need to care about ourselves. Sometimes history does that. Okay, who has anything they want to say? Yes, Laura, and then Moshe, and then anyone else. Okay.
It's similar to on an individual level. When you're trying to teach a child how to get along in a group, you don't want that child to just always put everybody else before him or her. That wouldn't be a healthy way. But he should care about the others and not just only care about himself. So I think that even on that level, you're aiming to find the balance between the two, to get along in the world, to have self-respect, but to respect others too.
And the last 75 years, but take away the years of war, of existential threat, have been the first times in Jewish history since the destruction of the Second Temple where we've had the luxury of actually having these conversations. Because there's been a state that would protect most of the Jews. We've been given the Magash HaKesef, the silver platter of being able to say, there's less anti-Semitism. Maybe what has been so galling and frightening for all of us is, wait a second, there's a lot of anti-Semitism here right now. And look what happened in Israel. Moshe.
You took the words out of my mouth. The American Jewish community has very much focused on Israel since there is Israel, right?
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden, we have to start focusing on ourselves because there's anti-Semitism and we're feeling it. And I think that's a really important element of the way we think now. Because we're divided into, we're not just focusing on Israel, we have to focus on ourselves.
Well, and I mean, part of living as a Jew in the diaspora in the last 75 years was knowing there was a strong Israel. Exactly. We want that. We, as much as Israelis, need and want that myth, and not myth as a fairy tale, but myth as something that was shattered. When people were waiting for 12 hours in kibbutzim on the Otef Aza and Tzal wasn't getting there, that myth of Israel protecting not just them, but us, everyone. And it's painful for all of us. There's this, it's a meme that says it was on October 7th, but it's Shiva October, that it was Shiva in October. But then there's another meme I've seen where a calendar puts every day since October 7th as October 7th.
Shiva. Yeah.
We're all sitting in October 7th. Because we're trying to get over that pain. And you can't get over that pain while there's still surgery going on, meaning while there's still hostages.
Rabbi, just to go on to what Moshe just said.
Yeah.
He and I are old enough to remember 1967. And in 1967, we were really worried about the fate of Israel, what would happen to Israel. And when Israel won the war in 6 days, most of the world rejoiced. And there was no outward anti-Semitism. There may have been anti-Semitism, but most of the world was with Israel at the time. The difference between then and now is that what happened on October 7th obviously is tragic. But instead of siding with Israel, it's sort of like people blame the rape victim for the rape. They're blaming Israel. They're blaming Israel. I mean, I hear it from different people that it's not that Israel had it coming, but that Israel's policies of the last 20 or 30 years invited this. Well, nobody invites a massacre, and nobody invites a rape, and nobody invites what happened on October 7th. But the world today is different than it was back in 1967. And no longer is Israel seen as the underdog. The Palestinians are seen as the underdog. And you have people like Bonnie Watson Coleman, for example, who side with the Palestinians because they perceive the Palestinians as the underdog, as she perceives herself as a Black woman as an underdog. And that's, it's a problem.
I want to
Problem that
bring
we have
her
to
up
deal
for a
with.
second. I want to bring the politics of her up for a second because I actually now have had a 48-minute conversation with her. And there are things I certainly agree with her on. This is one of them. And she needs to hear from us. She's hearing from the Arab community, but she's not hearing from the Jews as much. So
She's hearing from her constituency, the Black community also.
I'm her constituent as well. If you flood her office, let her office know that you want full aid for Israel, that you want Israel to determine when Israel stops its war, not the United States.
Ginger and I have let her know.
Yes. So we're inviting everyone else on this call, on this Zoom, whoever your senators and Congress people are, maybe if you know a governor, everyone to call your elected officials. Now is the time to speak out in terms of aid for, this week is the time to speak out in terms of aid for Israel. Okay, who has something else to add that complicates our narrative or that's interesting? Hazel, then Edna. Hazel, unmute.
Yeah, I had a phone call, so I closed it. I was going to say that it's a very complicated thing. And so many people know. I think the Palestinians and the Palestinian have done a fantastic job of public relations over the years. I was just reading a long article by somebody who was saying he met with someone years ago who was an Arab who is, I think, now been arrested somewhere, but he was talking about how they were going to get into the schools and they were going to portray the Palestinians as underdogs. And I think this was also helped by the anti-Semitism that has always been here. What came out now and what came out, what you saw on Nassau Street, was not something that suddenly appeared. Those people who were yelling from the river to the sea, get rid of the Jews, that was there before this happened. But I also wanted to mention a little personal thing from Princeton, because we had a Rabbi Gantler. I don't know how many of you people were members of the Jewish Center at that time.
Everett
Gantler, who was a pacifist and a very fine man. And before he came, as a matter of fact, when he was supposed to be sworn in as rabbi, if you get sworn in, whatever, he went down to march in Selma. I mean, he was a really, and he was especially when the 67 war broke out. And at that time, we were walking down Nassau Street wondering if Israel was going to survive. And the next day, everybody gathered at the Jewish Center and he gave a sermon. I think it was I wouldn't say it was that day. It might have been a day after, but it was in the very first stage when he was praying for the survival of the Jews and the Arabs. Now, it was one thing to wait later and then say, we don't want anyone killed. And but to say it at that time probably was the end of his rabbinate at Princeton. I mean, because there's a time for yourself, and as you say, and a time for universalism. But there is a time when you just have to think about where justice is on your side and what you need for yourself. That's just what I was going to add. It's just
or maybe he was a prophet. I don't know. Okay, who's going next? Anyone?
It's so complicated, like Hazel said, and there are so many thoughts, but I had kind of a problematic feelings towards the word care in this context, because I'm thinking about the poem by Chernyakhovsky that I will believe in human being as a human, ki ba'adam ha'amin, and at least for my outlook at things, I hope that this כן, שחקי כי באדם מאמין, that I will keep on believing in human nature, that this pogrom, terror, whatever, this awful Saturday and whatever we are going through, will never take the love or the appreciation or the respect to the other, whoever he is, period. However, ethically, morally, politically, existentialistically, whatever, judging the deeds of the other versus others, that has a lot of weight. So what I'm trying to say, the word care for me, obviously, even at the time of the Holocaust, I can hear my father telling me there were always good people that helped. Okay? So it's not, anyways, that's what I wanted to say, that hopefully, like Golda used to say, I don't remember the quotation, that the moment they will let us kill Palestinian kids, this will be awful, right? So
we don't want to own the hate.
Exactly.
We don't want to own the hate. We don't want that. We want to always be able to go back to those foundational texts of Breshit, that we are Nivra B'Tselem. We are all Nivra B'Tselem. We are all created in God's image.
But that doesn't take the judgment of what is evil.
That's right. Also, they're murdering our children. They're getting away with murder and rape. Yeah.
Right. So that's why I have a lot of problem also with presidents of universities or with people that are trying to equate, I feel bad for them, I feel bad for them.
No, right. Yeah. So I want to say that I am so fortunate. I really can't tell you how fortunate I feel to be your rabbi and to learn with you and to come and daven with you and to be in shul with you and to know that we don't always agree, but that I feel like most of us are a millimeter or a centimeter apart, and that's okay. And but that we are all this echad struggling together, and mostly we need to be together. We need to be hugging each other and hugging our children and our grandchildren and praying for our friends and family. And Moshe said, oh, he feels a little bit not there, but he actually is an Israeli citizen. And there's many in our community who have family there. But you know what? When someone says to every American or diaspora Jew, do you have any family in Israel? What's the right answer?
Yes.
About 7 or 8 million. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, Judy, who is in the Rabbi Parent Club.
So first I apologize for coming late. I thought I was coming early. My head is not screwed on straight.
No one is.
My daughter, who is a conservative rabbi, is in Israel right now. And I know I will get enough air into my lungs when she's back on American soil.
And we want her to come visit us here at the Jewish Center.
And she will be happy, I'm sure, to do that.
But could you actually tell everyone here the amazing work that she does?
I will, but yes. She's in Israel she's a Shalom Hartman, which is the course we're taking with Rabbi Mero, rabbinic fellow, and she's there with colleagues working. Today she was in Ein Gedi, where displaced families have been, and Shalom Hartman asked some of their rabbinic fellows to come and provide spiritual counseling visit the wounded, visit people who are in mourning, visit displaced families, and so on. So she's there working. I care so much about the situation. And when you were speaking before about how you care for your own child more, I don't know if I care more about the situation in Israel right now. And of course, I care that she's there. We have other family in Israel as well. What I really wanted to do was two things. One, I wanted to ask for everybody's prayers, which I know we all are praying for an end to this. And I wanted to say to Moshe and some of the others who said, The problem is the hostages. The problem is anti-Semitism. The problem, it's gam v'gam v'gam. It's all of it. It is one big baya, one big problem. And we have the ability, the Jewish people have the ability. Look at how together we are. People who wanted to, I took a Shalom Hartman course a few years ago on how Jews could speak to other Jews about Israel without wanting to kill each other. And I ended that class wanting to kill several people in the class. I say that figuratively, you know, and we're
Judy, you have people on the political spectrum in this who come to this class on the right and the left. We're all together now. Yeah.
We're all together now, and it'll change again, but right now we're all together. We're focusing, we're donating, we're doing everything that we can. And we will have, once we don't feel quite so traumatized, we'll have solutions, creative solutions, ideas, and we'll work together. And so I feel some hope about that. And really, that's all I wanted to say. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Thank you. And we can't wait. Also, her daughter works at the American Jewish World Service, doing great work for humanity on behalf of the Jewish people. Universalism from the particular. I want to ask you a question, which is, next week we have class. I will be coming back from United Synagogue Regional Convention, National Convention. I may or may not be back yet, but I will be doing class from wherever I am. I'll be in Baltimore for United Synagogue Convention. You all could have gone. Next time you should go to United Synagogue Convention. The week after is Hanukkah at 4 o'clock that afternoon. On the second day of Hanukkah, we will gather in a public space in Palmer Square to light Chanukiah, to light a Hanukkah menorah and to sing songs. We'll have musicians there and to sing about the Maccabees and to honor the modern day Maccabees and to really, you know, celebrate. And I hope that people will come. It's at 4 o'clock. It's candle lighting in Palmer Square at 4 p.m. in 2 weeks on Tuesday.
It was so much fun last year, and I have new ears.
And we give out Hanukkah gelt, and we
light up.
It's really, really wonderful, and it's really Pirsume Nace. It is really publicizing the Nace, the miracle in public in downtown Princeton and Palmer Square. You all, so the question was, I had thought that, well, maybe that night I would do class in person after at 7, and bring you latkes, but can people come to class? Do you prefer to do it online?
I prefer online.
I do.
Okay.
I'll be in Florida.
Okay. So that's fine. So we'll do it online.
You go, girl, Janet.
We'll do it online. We'll do it online. And
it may be a little later than usual, right, Rabbi?
I mean, I think I'll be able to be there.
What time is the gathering in Princeton?
4 o'clock. 4 o'clock, I think.
Yeah, 4 o'clock. I also want to say that the Friday night of Hanukkah, I believe it's the 8th, we have a musical service. Judy and Mike, anyone who's not near us, you can watch it on the live stream. It's from 6:30 to 7:30. It's with musicians and with me and with Avi. It will be very, very joyous and freilich and Hanukkah. And then there is a potluck Shabbat dinner, Shabbat under the stars. The next night, we're having a games night Hanukkah party for adults and children at the Jewish Center. So those are my announcements. And
very nice.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks,
all.
Rabbi.
It's lovely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Judy, do you want to stay
Thanks,
on?
Rabbi.
Judy, do you want to stay on?
Me?
Yeah, Shapiro. Sorry. Did you see the emails today? Shapiro? From Beth
You mean
Shalom?
about-
Barry? Yeah.
Yeah.
We have a friend that passed away today who was an
Mm-hmm.
iconic US wire. His name was Barry Megan. He was in his 60s and ran USY for decades.
Yeah. But I also heard about a
Hi,
kid
Lucy.
from Philadelphia.
Hi.
Who passed away the other day. Do you know what I'm talking about? One of the women at the boutique today said that there was a cantor that passed away from Philly.
Yeah, so I spoke at shul this week about him. He was my cantor. And that woman, Jennifer, went to the shul that I grew up in, Kenner Davidson.
Oh.
He was 94, and I still hear him in my head. Whenever I begin the Mariv service, I begin with, "This is how we sing the evening Mariv song." So I do his tunes all the time. I spoke about him Friday night a little bit. Cantor, Dr. Chazan Charles Davidson of blessed memory. Tonight was the end of Shiva for him, or tomorrow morning, I guess. Yeah, Lucy?
Would you please repeat the name in that book on Zionism?
The Zionist Ideas by Gil Troy.
Okay, thank you.
You can get it from JPS, Jewish Publication Society. Gil didn't write it. It's just an editor. It's primary source material of Zionist thinkers till this day. What we like about the new reformatted version is that it's women and men.
Yeah.
And thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night, everybody.
You want to see the dog?
Yes.
Of course.
You want to see the dog? I'll show you the
Sure.
dog.
Suzanne, I liked your cat. Beautiful cat.
Yes. He's a beast, right, Mindy?
He is large.
But he's my lover boy. He's just my Hank.
How does he
I
get?
like the way you make a mustache out of his tail.
Is there a problem with the mouse ears? You know, he's a cat.
Aw.
Well, you know, the first time I put on the ears, tiny girl, where's my girl?
Oh,
Beautiful. She looked like she got all clean, like fancy today. Did she go to the groomer or something?
Went to the groomer yesterday.
No.
Nice beard.
Yeah, right? The groomer actually gave me